Well, Your Excellency, it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the warm, hospitable welcome. And it was an important opportunity and a great honour to meet with His Highness the Emir as well as His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed. We discussed, as well as Afghanistan, the bilateral relationship which we cherish and we prize and we're excited about building on in the weeks and months ahead. But obviously Afghanistan has been at the forefront of what we discussed. I had the opportunity to visit the compound which is accommodating Afghan refugees here in Doha and hear of the heart-rending stories. It reminded me of my father who came to the UK aged 6, and we will extend a warm welcome and provide haven to those who wish to come to the UK and who are eligible. Our commitment on the part of the UK to Afghanistan remains. We need to adjust to the new reality, and I think we had good conversations about what that will involve. It's worth saying that in the airlift between the 15th of August and the end of the month, we secured the safe passage of over 15,000 people out of Afghanistan, the biggest operation of its kind in our living memory, and in no small part because of the cooperation from our Qatari friends. So I want to really emphasize how much we appreciate that. I think in challenging times, you really know the meaning of friendship, and certainly Qatar has done an exceptional job. Now, of course, we need to adjust to the new reality, and our immediate priority is to secure the safe passage of those remaining British nationals, but also the Afghans who worked for the United Kingdom, and indeed others who may be at most risk. Again, we're working closely on that and looking at the practicalities of how that can work. The UK sent a rapid deployment team to this region because we want to make sure, working with third countries, that we can process both the nationals but also the Afghan workers under the Arab scheme and anyone else, and support third countries in their efforts. We're also very mindful of the regional challenge that a flow of Afghans from Afghanistan will create, the instability it risks creating for those neighbours. One of the reasons we're doubling our aid spending to £286 million is to try and help support those countries bearing the brunt. I want to thank Qatar for the incredible work they're doing to support us in almost every effort, including hosting the United Kingdom's relocated embassy to Afghanistan here. We do want to make sure we can retain lines of engagement, because that's how we will adjust to the new reality that I mentioned. It is going to be a challenge, and it will require a new set of strategies. So I think there are 4 key things that we've discussed and we are very like-minded on. The first is making sure Afghanistan is not a haven or harbour to terrorists again in the future. Secondly, preventing a humanitarian crisis. And again, that's why we've doubled our aid spending for Afghanistan this year. The knock-on effect of that is third, to present and to preserve regional stability. And fourth, to test and hold to account the Taliban on their commitments to progress to a more inclusive government. And obviously we'll be looking very carefully at what happens in the field of human rights and the treatment of women and girls. I think it will be important to build an international coalition around this. I think our Qatari friends are clearly a linchpin, influential player in that. We are working with our G7 presidency, our NATO membership. We obviously secured with the French, the Germans and the other members of the Security Council a resolution in recent days in New York, which I think is important. It provided, I think, a good framework that all countries should be able to agree on as a way for moving forward. Now we need to get wider buy-in, regional countries involved. Clearly there's a lot of countries with a direct stake in what happens in Afghanistan, as well as countries who will feel and be moved by the humanitarian risks and the plight. I think above all we need to put a grouping together that can exert maximum moderating influence on what the Taliban does next. And we will certainly be judging them, yes, on their words, but more importantly on what they're willing to do to live up to the assurances that they've made. We'll certainly keep working with all of those partners none more energetically than our Qatari friends, to make sure that we can preserve the gains that have been made in Afghanistan over the last 20 years and continue to support the Afghan people. Thank you.
Thank you.
سعادتكم نبدأ الآن المؤتمر الصحفي
So we
والسؤال
shall
الأول
begin
موجه
the questions.
قناة
The
CNN.
first question from CNN.
Hello. Sam Kiley, CNN. Question for the Qatari Foreign Minister. You've been intimately involved in the important practical but also symbolic regeneration of the airport. Could you give us an update on when you think it might open? And for Mr. Raab, what sense of guilt do you feel over the people who have supported Britain, both Britons themselves and people who've supported Britain, that you've left behind?
Sam, regarding the airport, actually, we are still in the evaluation process. There is no clear indication when it's going to be fully operational yet, but we are working very hard and also engaging with Taliban to identify what are the gaps and the risks for having the airport back up and running. But we will remain hopeful that we will be able to operate it as soon as possible. As we mentioned earlier, it's a very important and very strong statement also if Taliban will demonstrate their commitments to provide safe passage and freedom of movement for the people of Afghanistan. So we are trying our best to help in serving that interest, and we will do our best. We are engaging with them, engaging with also Turkey if they can provide any technical assistance on that front. And hopefully in the next few days we will hear some good news.
And on the question for me, look, we've secured safe passage out of Afghanistan for over 17,000 British nationals, Afghan workers, other special cases since April. But I do think we feel a responsibility to make sure that the remaining British nationals and Afghan workers can come to the UK. That's why we watch with great interest what may be possible at Kabul Airport, but we're also here, and I'm here, not just in Qatar, but moving on afterwards, to talk to regional countries about how we can ensure safe passage through third countries.
السؤال التالي موجه من قناة BBC.
The next question from the BBC.
From the BBC. My first question is that you said, Mr. Raab, that there are new realities. So do you see any working relationship with the Taliban and keeping in mind the new realities on the ground? And secondly, we have been getting reports that dozens of contractors who used to work with the British Embassy in Kabul, they have been left behind. Could you please tell us why and what is your message to them? Because they are hiding, and other people who used to work with the UK-funded organizations. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Look, we are pragmatic and realistic. We don't recognize governments. We will not be recognizing the Taliban, but we do see the need to be able to have direct engagement. Otherwise, we can't provide messages, we can't listen to the response. And I think, as my friend Sheikh Mohammed said, I think there are some early tests for the Taliban. One was their approach to the airport during the evacuation. Now we're into a different space. Can we see safe passage provided out of Afghanistan? That would be quite an important first test. We need to be able to discuss that or engage on that. And there'll be other issues. We all want to avoid a humanitarian disaster or crisis. Well, that will require the Taliban to be able to provide and ensure a permissive climate and environment for aid workers. So I think engagement will be important in order to set early tests, and what we'll be judging the Taliban by is their actions, not their words.
السؤال التالي موجه من وكالة الأنباء الفرنسية.
So from the French news agency.
Ibrahim Badawi, AFP. I have two questions. Sheikh Mohammed Abdurrahman, Qatari technical team already arrived in Kabul airport. Is Qatar planning to operate the airport? As the head of the Afghan Aviation Authority already said, that they are ready to sign partnership agreement with Qatar. For Minister Dominic, what might encourage the UK to make a relationship with the Taliban? Thank you.
Well, regarding the airport, actually, right now we are in an assessment and surveying period. If Qatar help is going to make a difference and make the airport up and running sooner, definitely we will not hesitate to help and support that process. But there is no agreement yet how this form of operation is going to take place, and still under the discussion, as I just mentioned. We are trying our best to support now bringing back the airport to be up and running, and this is remaining our focus in the next short-term period.
Thank you. The reality is, as I described, we will not be recognizing the Taliban anytime in the foreseeable future. But I think there is an important scope for engagement and dialogue and to test the intentions and indeed the assurances that have already been made by the Taliban. Safe passage out of Afghanistan for, and I'm afraid to my friend from the BBC I didn't mention it, but to those Afghan workers or contractors who are eligible and still want to come to the UK or indeed other countries. I think the commitments they've made not to allow Afghanistan to be a base or a safe haven for terrorist groups, the permissive environment for humanitarian workers. They've talked about forming a more inclusive government. In all of these areas, we will judge them by what they do, not just by what they say.